Hi there, my name is Remy Okubanjo, and welcome to the Esthio Exchange. We will be continuing with the story of the woman in the Bible in honor of Women's History Month in March 2026. And the character we'll be going through now is Rahab. So I'm going to first give some context on how we encounter Rahab and what the story is, and what about Rahab we can actually glean and learn from as women. So for some context, this is a consideration of Moses delivering the Israelites from Egypt, and they find themselves wandering in the desert for 40 years. It takes them longer than it should have for them to get into the promised land. Moses actually didn't end up going into the promised land, but he hands over the reins to Joshua to help lead the Israelites into the promised land. And in order for them to possess this land, they had to go in from city to city, because it wasn't just like one land, because there are 12 tribes of Israel. So they needed a lot of land. So they had been going through different cities to conquer those cities. And Joshua had sent two spies to go to this particular city called Jericho. And this is where we encounter Rahab. For some reason, these two spies find themselves in Rahab's house, and we're introduced to Rahab as Rahab the harlot. Harlot means prostitutes. That's how we were introduced to Rahab in the Bible. And for some reason, they find themselves at a house, and she ends up actually providing refuge to this man in a room in the roof of a house. And it's interesting because I like to look up the meanings of the names of these characters, because I do believe that our names really matter a lot to our purpose here on earth. And Rahab means roomy, to be roomy, which I find interesting because she also ends up having enough room to give to the spies. And Rahab wasn't living alone. She lived with her father, her mother, her brothers, and her sisters. Because when she encounters these two spies, she shares with them about how, there was not terror amongst the people of the city of Jericho, because they've heard so much about the God of the Israelites and how he delivered them, through the Red Sea and also through the River Jordan, and how how they've defeated, these different empires and all that. And as she said, for I know that your God is not just the God of the heavens, but also the God of the earth. I found that interesting because you think a harlot, what does she know about God, right? She tells the spies, I know you guys will conquer the land because of your God. And she said, promise me that when you do come, that you save me and my father's house. So my father, my brothers, my mother, and my sisters. When you think about a harlot, a prostitute, it's very easy to get judgmental and think they're serving and all about self. But she was actually very much focused on her family and ensuring that her entire household was saved and not just her. And it was also very brave of her to make that ask, because they did not care. They were trying to conquer the land. They could just come and destroy everyone. To cut the story short, um, the spies go on back to Joshua. They share what happened. They shared how Rahab protected them and the promise they made to her. And when they did eventually go to conquer the land, Joshua ensured that promise was kept. We were told that everyone in that city was destroyed except Rahab and her household. Except Rahab, her father, mother, brother, sisters, and all her things. Even her things, right, survived. So that's it's very remarkable. And then we're told that she ended up living amongst the Israelites. And then fast forward, we're told in the Bible that she actually ends up marrying an Israelite man called Salmon. And she and Salmon end up birthing Boaz. We all know about Boaz. You don't have to be Christian to know about Boaz. Boaz is like this archetype of the kind of man you should date. There was this, video out there on the internet at some point, like, don't marry a Noaz, a Brokaz, you should marry a Boaz, right? So this man, this very good man, is who Rahab raised. And we all know a woman plays a critical role in the raising of her children. So that also says a lot about Rahab, that she raised this wonderful man. So Boaz ends up marrying Ruth, and Ruth and Boaz birthed Obed, and Obed births Jesse. And Jesse births David, the King David. Everyone is about King David because we all know about the story of David and Goliath. And he's like one of the greatest kings that ever lived on earth. And then we all know where Jesus comes from. Jesus is in the bloodline of David. So that's to tell you that Rahab is one of Jesus's ancestors, like his great, 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 great grandmother. That is amazing. So that is Rahab's story. Such a beautiful story, the transformation, and it really showcases to us the goodness of God. Like there's nobody that God cannot use as long as we yield it to him. Now let's dig into Rahab. Like, how did Rahab go from being a harlot to being Jesus's great, 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 great grandmother? Let's see if we can unpack that a little bit. So I shared about how we encounter Rahab in the story and the conversation, and how initially the officials also came to Rahab's house. So my question number one is, why did the officials come to Rahab's house? Did they go to every house in Jericho? Maybe they did, but I think they must have gotten wind that they saw these two Israelite men at a house. I think we're also told that Rahab's house were like by the city gate. So she must have seen a lot and heard a lot. But what I'm trying to share here is that Rahab had influence. Maybe it was because of where her house was positioned. Maybe it was because of the line of work she was in and the kind of people, the caliber of people that she encountered. Again, goes back to my first episode on the story of Eve and how us women have this innate ability to yield influence, especially in the lives of men around us. So we can establish that Rahab definitely had influence. But then again, remember that the people of Jericho, they did not serve Yahweh. Maybe they had false gods, maybe they had no gods. So that speaks to, ethics and morals. Put that against the same standards as an Israelite. We can assume that the society she lived in wasn't one of high moral values. And maybe that's how she found herself in that line of work, trying to fend for her family, because she was actually very family focused. Each time she kept ensuring that our entire household was safe. She was safe. Something that we can also glean and learn from Rahab that was inspiring is the fact that she was kind. She actually used those words specifically herself, right? She's told the two men that since I have shown kindness to you, so also show kindness to me and my father's household. So she was kind, right? So that also tells us to be careful not to judge people that we encounter just because of their current life situation. I think as women, we have this innate ability to be discerning and to have intuition beyond what's normal, right? Looking at Rahab, she had that intuition, that knowing, right? She said, I know that your God is not just the God of the heavens, but also the God of the earth. And this is someone that was not serving God. That probably didn't know, but she said, I know. So she had a knowing and intuition, right? That this God that they serve is not a God to be messed with at all. Like he would destroy this whole city, in a heartbeat. And she just knew that. And she didn't just dismiss that intuition. She got a conviction from it. And this is where the Spirit of God comes, because every one of us on earth are God's children, right? God can still find a way to communicate with us, even though we're not in good standing with him. He still has a way to communicate with his children, because God is the Father of everyone that was created, of every human that was created. He's still our Father. If he put his breath in us. So that was, I believe, God communicating with her in that moment. But it was our choice to respond. She could have dismissed it and said, hey, whatever, this God is all great and good, but this is my reality. I need to do this line of work to fend for my family, all those things. But she made the choice to respond to that conviction. And that conviction resulted in her taking that step to actually put her life in danger, because when those officials came to inquire of the spies, they could have just said she was lying, and they could have chosen to go through her entire house to try to find this man. So she could have actually put her life and the life of her family in danger. She didn't make a sacrifice. She didn't just dismiss the intuition. She actually responded. She allowed herself to be convicted and she acted on that conviction. Because many of us, we know many things that we should do, that we should give up, but we don't. We don't because we're still trying to negotiate in our head and trying to figure out what the best outcome might be. But she was wise and intuitive and she responded to God's conviction and she ended up, making the right gamble, in favor of God's will. And, she responded, she hit the man, she was courageous to have them promise and, and she ended up getting saved, right? Like literally saved. Because I think for her to have been able to marry an Israelite man, she definitely had to go through the traditions and complied with all the laws that God had given the Israelites as they were journeying to the promised land, a whole lot of laws. So she definitely really did get saved. I believe she really did receive this God of Salmon as her own God as well. And that's the only thing that can really explain the transformation. It has to be God. How do you go from being a harlot to being Jesus's great grandmother, great 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 grandmother? It definitely has to be God. So God really stepped into her life in that moment and she responded and she said yes and she gave. She was willing to sacrifice. She was willing to give up the comfort. She was willing to give up what she knew. And then God opened up a whole new world to her. And the rest is history. The rest is history. Just to recap, some of the things that we can learn about Rahab is that she also played the long game. Like she wasn't servant. She could have easily just looked out for herself, but she looked out for her entire family. And I'm sure story about how she saved those two spies reverberated through the entire nation of Israel because for them to have reported to Joshua and for Joshua to have given that edict that when they destroy the entire city of Jericho for them to save only Rahab and her family and her belongings, everybody in Israel must have known about Rahab. So I'm sure Salmon must have gotten wind of like, wow, who is this courageous woman? He wasn't caught up in the fact that she was a harlot. So he speaks to her person, right? Our situations don't define us. Our circumstances don't define us. What's most important is who's your person? Are you kind? Are you hospitable? She was being hospitable. She's roomy. Like her name means roomy. So she probably innately was a hospitable person. And that's also probably why she was good in that line of work. Again, the devil will use our gifts for his agenda, right? So that hospitable spirit that she already had, yes, it was being used in the wrong way, but she had that. And that was our person, and that still came through even when when it was a moment of danger for her, really. Being hospitable, that's what she is as a person, kind and hospitable. I can see that she was also caring. She was family oriented. She really ensured that nothing happened to her father and mother. And listen, I'm even surprised that her father and mother were living with her in this line of business. She probably did all of that in that same house. Like how? But again, we're not going to all of that. Maybe it was the society, but still, I think it still speaks a lot that she looked out for her family, right? So this is just a reminder to us again that even as women, no matter what circumstance we find ourselves in, even if we've made some really bad decisions in life and we find ourselves in circumstances that are not so great, it doesn't have to stay that way, right? Look at how God transformed Rahab's life. There's really an opportunity and really, I think every day we're given opportunities, those small choices. Those small choices amounts to really big choices that could end up transforming our lives, right? It probably started with Rahab hearing these rumors or these talks about Israelites, the God of Israelites. And she probably started pondering like, okay, how did they split the Red Sea? How did they cross the Jordan? How did they do that? She's probably, thinking about these things in her heart. She didn't just dismiss them. And that conversation with God probably started. And God presented her an actual opportunity to choose. And she chose right. She chose right. She chose well this time around. She didn't know, she actually made the right choice. So every day we're presented with choices. So you could still have a chance to make the right choice to steer your life in the right direction, in the direction that could actually transform your life and give you a similar testimony and story like Rahab. So that's the story of Rahab. Such a good one, very spicy too, but such a good one. And again, an encouragement to every woman out there who feels like she's made so many mistakes and she's not sure how to find a way back. It's in those little choices, but really it's your person. It's your person. Are you kind? Are you gentle? Are you paying attention to that intuition that you have on inside of you? Are you yielding your influence for good? So that's all I have to share today. And I hope you enjoyed this as well. And I'll see you next time. Bye.